Welcome to my show. I'm a guest here. Her name is Jennifer Stafford. Mrs. Jennifer, how are you doing, ma?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you very much, Mrs. Jennifer. And also, thank you so much for the time and the opportunity. Firstly, you are a physiotherapist. You are also a mental health choreographer. Can you please, Mrs. Jennifer, discuss more about yourself and how you are doing currently now, Mrs. Jennifer?
Of course. I'm a psychotherapist in New York City and Los Angeles. And I work with people on navigating their emotional well being.
Very much beautiful. In regards to the experience you've had, the beauty is that our health and also every single thing that can help us move forward in life and also understand the right direction we should move is what is very
Mhm.
much needed, most especially in our time today. And that is why I would like to drive if you've written any book, Mrs. Jennifer. Have you written any book or are you planning to write any book in the coming future, Mrs. Jennifer?
I actually have a book, and I wrote it in 2020. It's called The Restructuring, and it's actually a therapeutic poetry book to support your emotional well being.
Very much beautiful. Definitely expect more in the coming future, and also the one you've currently written that can actually be a source of healing and also a source of growth as well. Mrs. Jennifer, I would like to drive to the perspective of people who spent years being hard on themselves. How do you think they can begin to understand self love not as indulgence but as a necessary part of healing and wholeness, Mrs. Jennifer?
I'd say that self-love, it's a very abstract concept for people usually. And so people who look at self-love on the surface may do things like go get their hair done or their nails done or do that kind of thing. The self-love that I really work with clients on is more internal. So it's paying attention to how you talk to yourself. Sometimes it could be as simple as the gesture of putting your hand on your heart. Just, I ask clients all the time, how often do you put your hand on your heart? And that almost is a grounding technique. It really is a grounding technique to allow yourself to just remember that you're here. Put your feet on the ground and to remember that your heart is beating. And so that's a big gesture of self-love. And believe it or not, it actually really, really helps a person begin the healing process. Just putting your hand on your heart.
Thank you so much for the insight. You can see how
Mhm.
little we can do to ourselves and also understand how we can build ourselves in perspective of self-love. Because loving ourselves is the root for us to actually deal with a lot of situation in our life. And putting our hand in our heart and also making some positive words to ourselves shows that kind of bringing the incense of positivity towards ourselves and making us to be in the position to believe what we've said as well. And also, I would like to drive to
Absolutely.
the perspective. I do know that you spoke briefly on, expression and also touching the art, but if there's also any other ways you think someone can begin practicing self-love in a real and grounded way, especially if
Mhm.
they have never truly felt safe, worthy, or at peace with themselves. Mrs. Jennifer.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. There's even theoretical ways of practicing therapy. There's something called cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and it's a thought restructuring because everything we do goes through our brain. And so you can actually start to work to restructure your thoughts, which restructures your thinking patterns. And you can restructure, rewire your thinking towards self love. Self love is essentially compassion. And I like to break compassion down into patience and understanding. So, another very concrete way that a person can practice self love is by practicing self patience and self understanding, which requires you to slow down. So, you slow down, you practice self patience, and you practice self understanding.
Thank you so much for the insight. Now we see that we can understand that we have to work on ourselves in understanding our self love, practicing, and also other activities as well that can help us grow more better. So when we understand those little things, then we can be in the position whereby we can start to build that sense of self love within ourselves, even if we are feeling not safe or not worthy or not really at peace. Thank you so much for the insight, Mrs. Jennifer. And also,
Of
I would
course.
like to drive to people who are carrying emotional wounds, shames, or self criticism. What role do you think self love plays in helping them move from inner conflict to healing, Mrs. Jennifer?
Releasing it, letting it go, right? Like our emotions are not us. And so our traumas are not us. They are experiences that help shape our brains. And I really talk to clients. I call myself a mental health choreographer because I help clients choreograph mental processes in a way that helps them be the most effective, efficient, and authentic version of themselves. So just reminding yourself, my wounds are not me, right? Like you wake up every morning, you remind yourself, hand on the heart, my wounds are not me. I'm here. You ground yourself. A lot of this is the chemical piece. When you talk about bringing in the heart is incredibly powerful. It has bioelectricity that is incredible. The electromagnetic field extends outside of our body, almost 3 feet, right? And so the heart is a big foundation of healing. So, what you said, using words that are positive words, giving yourself compassion, talking about gratitude, giving yourself nurturing and tending to, and tenderness. Those are ways, even a gentle hug. I sometimes ask clients or give clients the homework of hugging yourself in the shower. If you're hugging yourself in the shower and you cry, let the tears wipe down with the water from the shower. You release it and you let it go. Your wounds are not you, you know?
Exactly. It is not who we really are. The wound is just like a burden. It doesn't define who we really are. It doesn't define how
Hmm.
we actually need to also react and also give ourselves out to people. We should learn to know how to release it. And as we as human beings, we are all different. Everybody
Hmm.
knows what works with him or her. And that is why we have to understand ourselves to be in the position to know how we release this kind of pain and emotions that are causing a lot of wounds, because wounds
Hmm.
are just for the moment. And speaking positive words, as you said, saying positivity that can actually help one to groom and also understand more better. Thank you so much for the
Right.
great perspective, Mrs. Jennifer. And also, Mrs.
Mm.
Jennifer, I would like to drive to the point whereby you can also drive to the area where you can tell, help us to tell the difference between true love and more surface level ideas of self care that do not actually address deeper healing, Mrs. Jennifer.
Mm. I would say that the true love is an embodiment. It's an experience that you feel in stillness. Uh, so when you are able to slow down and practice slowing yourself down, especially with breathing and going to your breath, you can experience practicing. I call those self love practices where you take deep breaths below the belly button and really allow yourself to do some of that diaphragm breathing. You're bringing in a practice of love towards self by practicing breathing, honoring your breath. The more surface level things, tell yourself you're okay. And, like that kind of stuff, it can last for a couple minutes, but you want something that lingers and endures. And so when you slow down, you really are able to touch the ground level of the love that lives within yourself.
Thank you so much for the insight, Mrs. Jennifer. Now we understand how powerful self love can actually help us in regards to a lot of perspective. and how we can also try to differentiate in those perspectives as well. Thank you so much for the great insight. And also, I would like to drive
Mhm.
to the point of ways self love can also be practicalized through boundaries, because you've explored more in the perspective where one can actually, release, help themselves, say positive word and other perspective as well. But despite all that, Mrs. Jennifer, what do you think are also some everyday ways self love can also be practiced through boundaries, rest, honesty, and the way we speak to ourselves, Mrs. Jennifer?
Yeah, a lot of healing involves cognitive restructuring. So it's about talking to yourself differently. And so when you say boundaries, that may mean talking to yourself differently or talking to other people differently. A self love boundary could look like you not picking up the phone if you say that you're going to take a nap and people are calling you. Your self love boundary looks like not picking up the phone until after you wake up from your nap, or if you say, I'm not going to go on social media, and you keep your word with yourself, you have that boundary by being impeccable with your word. That's how you practice self love. When it you said that talking about rest, it sometimes a nap is self love. You know, some of my clients that are moms or dads and like they're ripping and running throughout New York City, I like to share with them, take a nap, take a break, slow down. And so sometimes self love does look like literally resting and just taking it easy.
I completely agree, because the every huge this life now is just full of a lot of forces. Forces that
Hmm.
can just turn the emotion down. And we have to
Right.
be really, really strong, most especially in our time today, because the
Hmm.
world is really more loudy now. And to be in this kind of position in war, sometimes, as you said, seeing positive word, and also if it's also possibility to give ourselves just a little bit break in everything that we
Hmm.
do, it helps us to reconstruct, to have time to relax and get ourselves back on board and also on track as well. It is a very, very, very powerful tool to help one recover from very serious wound that one is actually going through. It helps in many perspectives, and I sincerely appreciate you for the great insights, Mrs. Jennifer. I
Hmm.
would also like to drive to the point of listeners who feel disconnected with themselves currently. Some are in the position whereby there is no hope. They cry every day, they feel bad, but they still want to feel like someone who is actually strong in the society. For listeners who feel disconnected with themselves and from themselves, what do you think are the first steps they can take to help them rebuild a kinder and more trusting relationship with their own inner world, Mrs. Jennifer?
Something concrete that I would say to listeners that are feeling disconnected from themselves is a little story writing exercise. And so the story writing exercise is you write a story from the view of past you. So you start that story with, I used to, and you write about how you used to be. And then you write a quick, and it's 4 to 6 sentences, not that much. You know, you just write. And then you write a story about today I am. And today I am, and you write. And you write about where you are presently. And then in the future, I would like to. And you write from that prompt. In the future, I would like to. And you write your hopes and desires and dreams. And you just allow yourself to kind of put words to everything that is kind of circling going on in your head. That way you can get it out and read it and actually look at how you experience feeling connected to yourself, because you see where you were, you see where you are, and you see where you're trying to take.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Jennifer. Now we can know that saying positive words and also other things actually help us to heal emotionally. For us to be in the position whereby are losing hope and there is nothing we can actually do, we feel helpless. But for us to also rebuild it, there are also steps that we can also take. And I sincerely appreciate you for the brief one you actually brought on the table. For those who can try their best to assimilate and also try their best to build on that perspective. Thank you so much for the insights. And lastly, Mrs. Jennifer, there is also a question I normally ask during the end of the show. From our forefathers, from our ancestors, there are a lot of beautiful things that do exist during our forefathers' time that is missing in our time today. If there is anyone or anything you would like to bring back to our time today, what do you think that thing will be, Mrs. Jennifer?
I would say more connection to the land, more connection to nature. I think that will support balancing the energy in our society globally, is bringing back intentional connection to the land, intentional connection to nature.
Completely agree. As in the light of find ourselves today, we can try our best to build a very good source of community, a very good source of gaining alignment and also discussion that can help us actually emerge and also grow as well. Community is one of the greatest source of light and also a greatest source of healing because we will have people who are there for us, who can show us love, who can help us out, most especially in times of need when we feel really, really down. In the world that we are in currently, where a lot of people are more individual, it makes it more difficult to find someone who can actually spend time that can make one happy and also a whole as well. And we hope we get back to the perspective as well. Mrs. Jennifer, I also want to use this opportunity to thank you for the time for us to have this profound and insightful discussion. Thank you so much, Mrs. Jennifer.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being on your show. Thank you, thank you, thank you.